Good morning. Thanks to everybody who comes this morning. A lot of events that happened this week, and we just want to kind of make some clarification for different people to understand this. We're going to have some speakers today, and long-term partner in this is Delray Williams, who's the mayor of Moorhead. We have Aaron Schneider from the U.S. Corps of Engineers going to be talking. Tom Dawson is the head of the business partnership, and he's going to give us a little talk here. And Jessica Lee is from Senator Hoeven's office, and he'll give us a little update on what Senator Hoeven says. We have Justin Hansen, who is from Senator Heitkamp's office, and we have Lisa Gibbons from Kevin Kramer's office. So they're all going to make a little discussion because I'm sure you're interested in what their bosses think and what's going on. Now, last night what happened is we did have a discussion with the Diversion Authority meeting, and it's hard to grasp all of what's going on right now, but I think Nancy Otto made a very strong statement last night, so I would like to just share that with you to have some of the reactions some people have had to this news about the DNR as a report. Sure.
I'd like to address this to Governor Dayton and Commissioner Landwehr. In Fargo Moorhead, we are all one community. The overwhelming majority of Moorhead residents are employed in Fargo. Your decision places Moorhead, Minnesota residents' lives, Minnesota homes, Minnesota jobs, Minnesota businesses at risk. Your decision places our medical care at risk because we get our medical care in Fargo. Your decision may very well block a number of Minnesota students who go to school, go to college in Fargo. Your decisions affect our relatives that live in Fargo. We have fought many, many floods here. We don't want to evacuate our hospitals, our nursing homes, ever again. We don't want to have to fill and haul and lay millions of sandbags ever again. Put your politics aside. We feel abandoned by you. Please reconsider your decision on behalf of Minnesota residents. You represent us. Reconsider it. Thank you.
Kind of an emotional statement by Nancy. I think she's kind of strongly into it. But the thing that comes out with Delray and myself is we know we fight floods together. As a community, Fargo Moorhead area is bonded together, and although there's a river that divides us, we do many things together for the social economics development of the community. So a lot of people are wondering what the DNR decision means to us, and I'm standing here to assure you that we're going ahead with the project. We anticipated that we'd have a decision by the DNR, which we now have had, but we are going to continue to advance the project. It's a federal project. Aaron will talk about it a little bit. A lot of people need to know what do we do about it, and oftentimes in the flood of 2009, when Denny Wallaker was here, he would talk about how high the river would get and talk about stories. He was great for that. But oftentimes we'd come to the thing of what can we as the public do? What are we supposed to do today? Where are we supposed to go today? How high are the sand dikes supposed to get today? And it's those types of questions I think the public's kind of lost on, is what are we supposed to do about this now, Tim? The reality is that we've gone over many, many hurdles to get to the point we are in this room, that we have a project, it's federally authorized, we have a JPA, we have all the things that we need in place to proceed with the project. What we need the public to do is support it. We've come up with a financial plan that works, so we have a vote coming up. The vote's very relevant. If you want the project to go ahead and you want permanent flood protection, this is the time for people to get out and vote. Now, I was asked to bring up a story that went on with Denny and I, and actually it happened in this room. The congressional delegation came out, FEMA came out for a visit, and at that time we were going to evacuate 2,000 vulnerable. floods, many of the congressional delegation was used to the flood in Grand Forks, in which they lost. And they were very concerned with the rising waters. We got another prediction that it'd even be higher than it was going to be. In fact, we got told we had to go another foot higher on our dikes. And they came in and said, you need to evacuate the city. Now, I don't want anybody to be faced with that decision again in our lives, just because it's such a devastating statement to say, we want you to evacuate your city. And Denny stood up and I stood up and we said, no, we're not going to evacuate our city. We're going to stand and hold, and we've defended the city, and we're confident that we're going to get through this. By the grace of God, we did get through it with sandbags, but that's not the best way to fight a flood. The best way is to have permanent protection. Placing plastic between us and a raging, rising river is not real protection. It's illogical. Fargo Moorhead needs and demands a permanent solution, and all the people in this room, we've worked very hard to get to this point. This is not the time to stop. This is not the time to waver in any of our support to this. But the way the public can help out with this next part of our endeavor is to vote strongly and strongly in favor of a permanent solution. And although my son Dylan loves to sandbag, and he's 13 now, it's time he does other things in school. So I'd much prefer that he learns to have a spring in which you can have many events and not worry about the rising waters. Delray Williams, could come speak next, please? Thank you very much.
I gotta admit, I did not hear what Nancy had said last night. I had to run to another meeting. But I do want to say that this is not a Carson Wentz or a Matt Cullen game. People are impacted either way we do this. And so I always want to recognize that when we do things like the diversion, which is really important, that we need to find solutions for permanent flood protection, we need to work together on this. This is not a Minnesota versus North Dakota thing. I love my state. I am very proud of my governor. I am proud of what they've done. And I just want to make a point of saying that. I think there's a point where we work together on this. And so that's where we need to be on how we work with this. I do want to say particularly when the part that I was particularly surprised about was having to do with that we are already protected. In 2009, I was very proud of Mayor Mark Boxland and then council and staff who made a decision to get going on it. I mean, obviously 2009 was a surprise to Moorhead. We were used to being a part of the flood help in Fargo, but we were not prepared to know that it would be part for us. And so Mike Redlinger and staff did an awesome job in the council at that point. And I was very proud that they went ahead and made a priority to make sure to fix it in Moorhead. But the numbers change. You know, it's not here is where things are. Water changes, and when one entity changes it in one community, it changes for all communities. And your numbers, as you get more information, the numbers change. And so in 2009, they used the numbers that they knew then, but we know different numbers now. We know more information now. And so I always think about it a little bit when it's sort of like accountants. I always kind of like, you know, I married an engineer, so it kind of, you can probably imagine the discussions we have at home. You know, they're just pragmatic. And, but when you have numbers, as an accountant, the numbers are the numbers, and you deal with that, and then you make decisions based on that. Engineers do the same thing. And so when those numbers have to change because you have more information, then you have to work with what you do with different numbers. And at this point, Moorhead, for all the work that was done, it is not adequate anymore. And it would pull in a good 800-ish kind of houses. I've asked our city engineer. I'd always not wanted to see which houses. My point would be I didn't want it to be like, wow, it's my house, And then people will think, well, she knows it's her house, so this is how she's going on it. Or her house is not impacted, and this is how she's going on it. I didn't want to know. You know, it was just important to know that there was a number of homes in Moorhead that would be hugely impacted by this. And, but I've asked Bob to rerun, and of course the numbers will have changed because new facts, to rerun to see exactly where they are so that we have a visual. And we will share that with our residents so they have more of a visual, not just a number, because sometimes that's more meaningful. The other thing that occurs to me is, and it has occurred to me for some time, is the Corps is going to do this work. You know, I know that it's very important to them. They're in a different dynamic. And when the Corps is feeling strong about moving forward, and I'm concerned about Minnesota, because that's who I am. I'm a Minnesotan. I want to make sure that in the same way North Dakotans get fair treatment with theirs, I want to make sure that Minnesotans get fair treatment. I know that if it's going to move ahead and if Minnesota is not a part of this, it will be whatever the Corps feels should be the fair treatment. And so the voice of Minnesotans for Minnesotans isn't there. And I think that would be a sad moment. And so that's another piece that I think is very important. I don't have feelings that the Corps would be unfair, but they have their procedures, and people that are neighbors will work differently than individuals that are not. And so I think we still have a moment to be working together on this, and I have not given up on that. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and we do truly value your voice at the table, and representing Minnesota is excellent. Aaron Schneider will talk now as the project manager of this project. Aaron, welcome.
Mayor Mahoney, Mayor Williams, thanks for having us here. I'm here on behalf of Colonel Calkins. Unfortunately, he can't be here today because he's meeting with Commissioner Landwehr. The Corps is committed to permanent flood protection for Fargo, Moorhead, and all the other surrounding communities. We are going to continue to move forward with this project. We are still on track, and we will be issuing our contract for the diversion inlet contract, which is in North Dakota at the junction of the southern embankment and the diversion channel. We anticipate awarding that contract later this month and initiating construction this fall. Public safety is the Corps' primary concern. We really want to make sure that we build a robust solution that benefits the more than 230,000 people that live and work in the Fargo-Moorhead area. A failed flood fight is not an option. That is not something we want to see. That could cause more than $10 billion in damages, put thousands of Minnesotans and North Dakota jobs at risk, and potentially risk the loss of life. Utilization of emergency measures is not an option that is feasible for long-term solution. We cannot continue to have 2009 type flood events, 2011 type flood events. That is not something that's reliable. An engineered solution is much more safe, much more resilient, and much more beneficial to the communities and the nation. It'll benefit both Minnesota and North Dakota. The Corps is very committed to continuing to work with Minnesota and North Dakota to modify the project to reduce impacts, as we have done for the past 8 years. We've been working with both states, and we've made numerous modifications to the project. We've increased flows through town that minimized upstream impacts. We've added gates on the diversion channel that minimized upstream impacts. We've tried to change the timing of operations to reduce the likelihood of any summer operations. We've worked closely with the cities to add mitigation where we needed to, increase the monitoring efforts in direct response to comments from the states of Minnesota and North Dakota. But we do know that any permanent project will have impacts. There is no option you can do in the Red River Basin that will not have impacts somewhere. Our goal the entire time is to minimize those impacts, and when we have to have impacts, to fairly compensate those who are impacted. So we know there's always going to be challenges, but permanent flood protection for Fargo and Moorhead will have impacts, and we're committed to working with the states to resolve those impacts. The science and technical information that we have support the Fargo diversion and the diversion in North Dakota. Both the federal EIS and the state EIS have confirmed that that is the best solution, and a diversion channel is the only solution that gets to certifiable level of flood risk reduction. So if we're going to have certifiable flood risk reduction, the only plan is a diversion channel. Emergency measures are not the plan. Certifiable level of flood risk management is common throughout the Red River Basin, it's common throughout North Dakota, and it's common throughout Minnesota. Why should Fargo and Moorhead expect anything less than certifiable level of flood risk management when nearly every other community in the Red River Basin has it, and that has been supported and funded by both states? This project remains the top priority for the Corps of Engineers, and we're going to continue moving forward with construction as quickly as we can to ensure that the residents of Fargo and Moorhead have the permanent flood protection that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Appreciate that. Tom Dawson is head of the task force for the flood business partnership, but I want to say the Chamber has been very good in helping support this effort, as well as the Home Builders Association, and you've been strong partners through our efforts of the flood, as well as when we've had a flood, that you've had many members come out and help us out. That's what's made it successful in 2009. I turn to Tom Dawson, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Del Rey and Aaron. Good morning. Nearly 6 years ago, the Fargo Moorhead West Fargo Chamber of Commerce brought together a group of business leaders from the region to support the efforts of securing permanent flood protection for the Red River Valley. The Business Leaders Task Force for Permanent Flood Protection has united businesses in Minnesota and North Dakota and has been active in advocating for local, state, and federal funding. We have met with selected leaders at every level to express our community's need for this project. In spite of our disappointment in the decision made by the Minnesota DNR, we remain steadfast in our support of the Fargo Moorhead Diversion Project. And we stand confidently behind the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who recognize this as a federally authorized project, and as you just heard from Aaron, therefore it will move forward despite the objection of state agency. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will select the first contractor over the next few weeks, and construction will begin shortly thereafter. We are part of a thriving and diverse, widespread metropolitan community of more than 220,000 people, and that's still growing. We will not allow the safety of our residents and property to be held hostage by the politically motivated actions of leadership who would rather have us rely on sandbags and plastic barriers than the security of permanent flood protection that has been studied for the past 8 years, and that will protect the homes and businesses of our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and generations far into the future. It is critical now more than ever that we all come together as a community and express just how important permanent flood protection is. And therefore, we will continue to urge citizens to vote yes on Fargo Measure Number 1 and Cass County Measure Number 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And I'm trying to remember, in 2009, we had essential businesses. Was insurance an essential business or not? I know Denny would not allow the Dairy Queen to shut down, and a few items would not allow the bars to shut down. About the same. We have Jessica Lee from Senator Senior Hoven's office to give us a little statement from the senator. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to offer some comments on behalf of Senator Hoven. And please know, since just because he's not here today doesn't mean that he's not still engaged in this issue and this project. The day the decision came out, in fact, he was on the phone that same day with staff members from the Corps, from the city, from the Diversion Authority. So those conversations, I'm sure, will continue. So on behalf of Senator Hoven, the short statement that he sent along today says this: we need to build comprehensive permanent flood protection for the entire Red River Valley. We cannot continue to fight floods with emergency measures year after year. So, thank you again.
Thank you. And from Senator Heitkamp's office, Justin Hansen.
Good morning, everybody. I'm here for Senator Heitkamp, and unfortunately she can't be here today in person, but she did give me a statement to read, and it goes as follows. Families and businesses across the Fargo-Moorhead region are all too familiar with the lasting devastation flooding can have. And as a community, we know that long-term solutions are needed to keep us safe. Sandbags and emergency levees built when the flood is approaching aren't going to cut it. That's why I've been working to secure the flood protection support more than 230,000 folks across the region need to stay protected. It's imperative this region has the permanent flood protection we have been working on for years, and they can count on for generations to come. Thank you.
And Lisa Gibbons from Kevin Kramer's office.
Good morning. It is my privilege to be here on behalf of Congressman Kramer. He regrets not being able to be here today, and I have a few words from him. We must reconfirm the commitment to permanent flood relief for Fargo. This region is too important to not protect with permanent structures. Good minds must work together, and working in concert with our Minnesota neighbors must be our goal. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
And we've had great comments from the senators and congressmen, talked to us and visited with us as well. State offices have called us, the Governor Dalrymple has called us as well and showed support for this project. And we've got great support from the legislative body as well with the funding and helping us get this through. We now open this up to any questions from the press or audience if you have some concerns. We made it perfectly clear or what? I think I could have Daryl answer that. The Diversion Authority met last night and had a discussion about that. Do you want to comment to that? Daryl Vanyo, Chairman of the DA Board.
The decision as to whether or not we're going to appeal was not made last night in our meeting. The attorneys advised us to give it another week. We more than likely will have another executive session next Thursday. So right now, we don't have an answer as to whether we're going to appeal the decision or not.
Any other question? Well, we wouldn't be into Minnesota till 2019, so we anticipate there's going to be some discussion and going on at that. Part of the issue for the Corps and us is that we have a timetable we're trying to keep on track with. And the project can be built by 2024. And the issue I think the public gets into is if you delay it too long, that always adds costs and it adds delay. And so once the project is started, we have a lot of things that are in the timetable that just march down that road. So our belief is it's best to keep going on that. And our hope is with Delray Williams too is that we can work with the Minnesota side to answer the concerns. And I think part of what you and I are talking about is the mitigation issues that might be in that community. So it's kind of a question of can some of those things come to some type of resolution. The mitigation plan is 177 pages, so it's not simple, it's a little bit complex. And I think that we will continue to strive to get along with our Minnesota partner. But Aaron, do you want to talk about the project goes forward and can go forward without that permit?
Yeah, the Corps was not a party to the permit determination here. We have the authorization and funding from Congress to move forward, so we will implement the project based on that authorization and funding as it becomes available.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for coming this morning. We appreciate it, and we hope you have some clarification of what the issues are. And sandbagging is not the answer. We need to go ahead with the permit protection. So that's what we will strive to do. Thank you very much.